Imagine London in ruins. Destruction and terror have haunted this city, providing perpetual ruin and rebirth. Writers, artists, and architects have been inspired to create great works of beauty that document a city beset by tragedy. Artistic interpretations of London across the centuries record hundreds of different cities. Pictures of London as a city of pageantry and celebration. Pictures of London as a city of unruliness and anarchy. Here, glory and beauty have always vied with stink and suffering for the attention of artists.
I first drove a crane in '82. I climbed up and I sat in the cab and I was very nervous, to put it mildly, because I wasn't particularly fond of heights. And so the first time I was really quite taken with it, looking around and thinking, I'm right in the centre of this. This is a world city. Everybody in the world knows about London, and I'm sitting over the top of it and looking around, and it is it's a privilege. The city has been there since forever. You know, you look at the old street system in almost any area, certainly of central London, you still see the little alleyways and little twisty little pieces. Just the hodgepodge of planning over the years. It gives me a feeling of change because the skeleton was laid down years and years and years ago. You can still see the shape there, and the shape presumably will stay there forever. Each generation has tried to put a stamp on it.
Throughout history, many have tried to impose beauty and order on London streets. But this city has discovered, time after time, its true character lies in its unplanned, chaotic nature. London has burned many times across the centuries. Its day of judgment revisited again and again.
All over the Thames, with one's face in the wind, you were almost burned with a shower of fire drops.
Above 10,000 houses, all in one flame. The noise and crackling and thunder of the impetuous flames, the shrieking of women and children, the hurry of people, the fall of towers, houses, and churches was like a hideous storm.
The Great Fire of London burned for 7 days.
The ruins resembling the picture of Troy. London was, but is no more.
Over 13,000 buildings were destroyed. It was the calamity of the age. But the smouldering hole at the heart of the city would prove to be a huge inspiration. Plans were drawn up to bring a new order of beauty to London. Architect Christopher Wren proposed a London to rival the glories of ancient Rome, triumphal avenues and great piazzas. At its heart, the new Cathedral of St. Paul's. Wren would create the first dome to be seen in London. It would be a new age of classicism, of harmony and proportion, banishing forever the chaos of the old Gothic city. St. Paul's would be the symbol of a London reborn, a great phoenix risen from the flames. Had Wren's plans for the whole city been realized, the look of London would be very different.
Wren's London would have been a noble city. But it was not to be. The forces of conservatism were too strong. And so the streets of the city remain narrow and winding. And this is the result.
The imprint of ancient London defines the map of the modern city. The city sheds its skin, while the bones stay the same.
Bank Junction is like, it's the pulse of London, it's the heartbeat of London. You've got the Royal Exchange right in front of you, you've got the Bank of England itself on the left, and there's so much going on there. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. You just don't actually see it, but you can virtually feel it going on there. You can envisage the old Roman legionists, I suppose, crossing the junction there, because initially it was the old Roman heart of London. Time sort of stands still while you're there. If you could sort of half shut your eyes, you can see the old traders, they're going to Lloyd's of London or little coffee houses in some of the back streets that are still there. And you can see behind the windows of all the buildings there, people, clerks with quill pens buzzing away, kind of making lists and charts, and just generally getting on with the business of London. It's the pulse, it's the heartbeat of London, virtually in that little area there.
During the 17th and 18th centuries, new streets and houses spread west. Beyond the old city, a very different London was emerging. The Georgian London of Bloomsbury and Soho would be the definition of urban elegance for the age. It drew admirers from around the world.
London has many fine open spaces called squares. The centres of these squares are shut in by railings. Those of Soho, of Leicester Fields, of the Red Lion, and the Golden Square are in this style.
Even the image of the Thames would be civilized in the eyes of Venice's greatest painter. Canaletto's picture of London is one of a beautiful city on the water, refined and aesthetically perfect. But Canaletto's London is pure artifice. He moved elements of the city around to suit his compositions. These are pictures of an idealized London. They are the dream pictures of their age, commissioned by Londoners who yearned for their city to be the new Venice. Though Canaletto spent almost a decade in this city, he rarely strayed from its grand thoroughfares and facades. Other artists were drawn instead to the toil and sweat of London. Covent Garden was home to a raucous meat, vegetable and flower market that survived into the 1970s.
This is the new Covent Garden, which is in Vauxhall. This moved here in 1974 from the old Covent Garden, which is in Covent Garden, not to get mixed up between the new Covent Garden and the old Covent Garden. The spirit, I think, still remains here because of the people. Come in.
Got Tommy Coopers in your team, get beat late every week, just like that.
The banter that goes on and the sexist remarks, which I love. I know I shouldn't say that, but I love it. It's part of Covent Garden. It's old London. My great-great-grandmother, she used to sell violets on the streets of London, like the old-fashioned when you see in Mary Poppins, the old lady that's selling violets on the streets. She would have gone early in the morning to the old Covent Garden, and I dare say that she had a bit of a whale of a time there. Covent Garden is in my blood. I just feel like it's my home. It's like being home. I can feel the atmosphere of how it must have been in the old days. It must have been dirty, smelly, busy, but absolutely full of people that were just alive, really, really alive in the mornings, and shouting and selling and, you know, trying to barter, and just the whole thing must have been just absolutely magical, really.
Around Covent Garden Market grew up a world of theatres, brothels and coffee houses that attracted writers and artists. Urban life in the raw was to become the subject matter of art. Painter William Hogarth rejected artifice to create a new picture of London. In a series of paintings from 1736 entitled 4 Times of the Day, Hogarth paints London as a divided city, where high society rubs shoulders with London's chaotic, grimy truths. It begins on a freezing morning in Covent Garden. An affluent lady makes her way to church, past drunken revelers staggering home from the night before. She is oblivious to the huddle of beggars and whores warming themselves by the fire. At noon, the notorious slum district of St. Giles is a divided world. On the left, a group of fashionable Huguenot immigrants pour out of the French church. On the other side of the street are a group of well-fed but slovenly English peasants. The only thing that connects these two worlds is a dead cat that lies across the curb. The evening takes place at Sadler's Wells Theatre on the edge of town. A young family's attempts to escape the crush and heat of the city have ended, ironically, in exhaustion and frustration. Finally, Hogarth takes us at night to Charing Cross. A chamber pot is emptied out of a high window. Its contents fall towards a drunk Freemason as he staggers home. His light illuminates a group of homeless children who huddle against a wall trying to sleep. Balanced precariously above their heads, bowls of fresh blood on the barber surgeon's windowsill. Hogarth renamed the very streets of the city after the alcoholic drinks that were fueling such debauchery and cheer. A warning of the evils of gin and a celebration of the healthy properties of beer.
Well, there's one particular smell I don't like. It's this dampness that comes at the end of the weekend at the back of these restaurants where everything's been removed. It's a sort of, I don't know what to describe it, like stale grease, food. It's a very depressing smell, you know what I mean? Rotten meat, yeah. I don't like dead rats. I don't mind live ones, something about dead rats, I don't know why. I hope he's not doing what I think he is, otherwise I'll have to go and arrest him. Well, there's a good chance that is probably your eye, yeah. You can always tell if it's in a corner, you know what I mean? If it's well hidden in a corner, that's your eye, you know what I mean? You know? That, I would imagine, I should say it's Coca-Cola. I remember once a girl, she was so sick, she was walking through, she was so bad, she kept getting sick. I said, hang on a minute, darling, wait a minute. I gave her a bag, I said, you do the rest. The blood was actually found somewhere around here. He's having an argument with his girlfriend. He automatically broke a bottle and stabbed himself and got off and walked off. It's mayhem, you know? Some really good punch-ups, you know what I mean? And then they just go home. They let off steam. And then I come in the next morning and try to work out what it was, who won, you know what I mean?
Hogarth was the first artist to see the streets of London as theatre. Their grime and detritus, grotesque characters and events, telling a very particular story. The seamier climate of the city streets has inspired ever since.
And it's fun because you're watching other people's behaviour. Because it's such a job, it gets into your blood. People will tell you that, you know. This and the refuge, it gets inside you, it's inside you. You find it hard to do anything else.
At the end of the 18th century, poet and visionary William Blake prophesied a city where awfulness and wonder become the same thing. Industrialization, the machine age, and the railways would transform the look and the experience of the city. No more the beautiful neoclassical Georgian city, London was to become a huge, sprawling metropolis. 1 million inhabitants in 1800 would become 6.5 million a century later. Now, the truest pictures of London would find beauty and inspiration in the most horrific qualities of the city. This immense view of the sprawling metropolis was billed as an illusionistic scene designed to thrill and excite. Once thought lost forever, it was discovered in America in 1940, being used to line a crate of firearms. Above the city, all seems wondrous. But at street level, it was out of control again.
The different departments of life are jumbled together. The hod carrier, the low mechanic, the tapster, the publican, the shopkeeper, the pettifogger, the citizen and courtier all tread upon the kibes of one another. They are seen everywhere, rambling, riding, rolling, rushing, jostling, mixing, bouncing, cracking, and crashing in one vile ferment of stupidity and corruption.
For the last 200 years, many artists have tried to contain London in one vast image or sprawling work.
I wanted to express my fascination with the city. Its contradictions, its intricacy, its mass of people, all living their separate and sometimes communal lives.
The Isles of Slough, trading estate.
I made London into an island for a number of reasons. Britain is an island. It's a collection of islands. It informs our national psyche. It's a wry joke on London's self-importance.
The Isle of Woking, dormitory island town.
It's an image of both order and chaos, and at times an image of where the order descends into chaos. Making it, I was trying to say how bewildering it can be sometimes to live in the place. The infinite amounts of stories and lives and histories that, 10 million people in a city experience.
The early clerk population are fast pouring into the city. Middle-aged men whose salaries have by no means increased in the same proportion as their families plod steadily along, apparently with no object in view but the counting house, knowing by sight almost everybody they meet or overtake, for they have seen them every morning, Sunday excepted, during the last 20 years, but speaking to no one.
On the 16th of October 1834, the Houses of Parliament burned to the ground. Once again, it was as though the day of judgment for the city was at hand. Among the astonished crowd was a Cockney artist named Joseph My Lord William Turner. Sketchbook in hand, he feverishly captured the scene as it happened. Turner became obsessed with the event, and the sketches resulted in an epic oil painting. And as before, out of destruction would arise a symbol of London's state of mind. William Kent imagined the Houses of Parliament looking like this. A classical building, symbolic of order and harmony, might have radically changed how the look of the city developed. But it's no surprise that once more dreams of order were thwarted. Sir Charles Barry's intricate Gothic revival design was far more suited to a metropolis that was becoming ever more chaotic and dark. A city of the night.
The streets of London, to be beheld in the very height of their glory, should be seen on a dark, dull, murky winter's night, when the heavy, lazy mist which hangs over every object makes the gas lamps look brighter and the brilliantly lighted shops more splendid from the contrast they present to the darkness around.
London's a very quiet place and a very ethereal, is that the right word? We all have our own favourite spots, and they're usually sort of dotted around London at different positions. You can't obviously drive a cab for 8 or 9 hours continuously, and you have to find a little quiet spot. There's a small church called St Mary's Church in Battersea Church Road, and it lies just on the bend of a river. You can see cormorants, seagulls, terns, and feeding and just sitting there themselves as well. You can see the large planes going over on their way to London Airport, but there's no noise at all, and it's just like a little part of the countryside. I love the tranquility of it. And you can watch the river slowly go past like it must have done for millions of years.
When the evening mist clothes the riverside with poetry, tall chimneys become campanili, and the warehouses are palaces in the night, and the whole city hangs in the heavens, and fairyland is before us.
American painter James McNeill Whistler faced tough criticism for these near-abstract nighttime images. But like so many artists, his picture of 19th century London was of a city cloaked and impenetrable.
A foggy day in London town had me low, and it had me down. I viewed the morning with much alarm. The British Museum, it lost its charm.
These smoggy pea soupers were a combination of fog and smoke from the increasingly large industry that lined the river. pea soupers were commonplace until the 1950s. In these fogs, all the grime and glory of Victorian London was contained. They have become the defining image of the city. In the late 19th century, two celebrated men trod the fog-bound streets of London. One was Claude Monet, the painter, who sought beauty in the world. The other, a philosopher, Karl Marx, who had a mission to expose poverty, suffering, and injustice. Two very different pictures of London.
Without the fog, London would not be a beautiful city. It is the fog that gives it its marvelous breadth. Its regular, massive blocks become grandiose in this mysterious cloak.
For Monet, the smoggy conditions made London beautiful. For Marx, they made it hellish. The source of the acrid smog was the factories of Whitechapel, Stepney, and Bethnal Green in the East End. The living conditions in this notorious district represented all that Marx and his followers railed against. Such contrasting views defined the picture of London in the late 19th century.
The Thames is so wonderful because the mist is always changing its shapes and colours, always making its light mysterious, and building palaces of cloud out of mere parliament houses with their jags and turrets. When the mist collaborates with night and rain, the masterpiece is created.
When I see these dirty, tattered children with their bright eyes and angel faces, I am filled with apprehension, as if I was seeing drowning people. How to save them? Which to save first?
And the squalor of the East End collided with the beauty of the fog-bound Thames at London's docks. Around the turn of the 20th century, the busiest, most important port on the planet. It's a world now almost entirely lost.
You see the river at night or early in the morning and with no other traffic about, and you squint and close your eyes to all the tower blocks and the modern buildings. Some of the river frontage hasn't changed at all in hundreds of years.
This stretch of the Thames from London Bridge to the Albert Docks recalls a jungle by the confused, varied and impenetrable aspect of the buildings that line the shore. They hide the depths of London's infinitely varied, vigorous, seething life.
Joseph Conrad was a seafaring man and knew the grim life concealed behind the docks too well to glorify it. But he could not deny the romance of the place.
When one talks of the Thames docks, beauty is a vain word. But romance has lived too long upon this river not to have thrown a mantle of glamour upon its banks.
The river is a special place at any time of the day, but in the middle of the winter, when it's pitch black, when there's a fog and a mist hanging over the river, it can be a really eerie place.
The sublime feeling of wonder mixed with fear drew artists to London. It was a city both aesthetically pleasing and horrific. This is the city that would launch the career of Alfred Hitchcock. Everything that would become known as Hitchcockian, dread, apprehension, excitement, and thrill, was contained in the world of the London fog. This great vision of the Thames Embankment is of a London engulfed by the fires of hell. To imagine London as a blasted, ruined biblical city became fashionable in the 19th century. As if London had at last taken its place amongst the great cities of antiquity.
We had 1 or 2 nights in Whitechapel, duly attended by police in plain clothes. We explored the docks. We visited the night refuges. We journeyed up and down the river.
Something to read on the train apart from the Evening Standards? I did sell one once. I remember it well.
Dore's constant remark was that London is not ugly.
When you've got nowhere to go, like for me, for instance, I'd walk the streets. I wouldn't settle anywhere. I'd sleep in the day. But during the night, I'd walk. If I had nowhere to go, I'd walk. You know, and the night isn't that long, and actually it's quite beautiful. You know, and you see the sun come up, you see the birds, you hear them. It is a beauty. You're seeing things that people who are shutting their doors at night, have to go to work in the morning, don't see.
With these images, artist Gustave Doré created a defining picture of 19th century London and its East End. Gothic, tightly packed, smoky, a place of poverty, where the dispossessed, the newly arrived, scraped a living on the dark, dangerous streets. But a recent discovery in the cellar of an old school in Hackney several years ago reveals a very different and proud picture of London's East End. A collection of 2,000 glass plate negatives dating from the 1860s from a portrait studio in Hackney. In contrast to Gustave Doré's East End, these are images of hope, of dreams, playful and frivolous. They are the work of photographer Arthur Eason.
Brush the hair down a bit there. You've been a bit windswept. And you're going to keep the hat on. You always keep the hat on.
All the time.
Even in
bed, eh, Mum? Even in bed.
Even in bed, really?
family first came to London in 1950s from Barbados.
And we're getting the smiles happening too. This is good.
When we were born in Hackney, brought up in Hackney, we were like used to this big community, this like big family of people.
Pretend you're enjoying yourself. That's good. Okay. Let's have you relax a little bit, shall we? I don't think I could really pigeonhole Hackney people as such. They're far too varied, far too many different ethnic groups, different types of people here for all sorts of different reasons. He's very serious over there, isn't he? That's better. Okay. I guess if there's one consistency at all, it would be the fact that they're not from here originally. There are far more people passing through the area on their way to other places or settling here, but in general haven't started here.
And as the 20th century dawned, the earliest images of London captured on moving film reveal a fast-paced city, chaotic and dramatic.
Have you heard the latest thing in rhythm? It's a dream, and it's got all London in a daze. Got the population swinging rhythm, and you're gonna crave this dancing craze. Let's swing London rhythm, let's bring London rhythm hot into town. Come on, babe, let's trot 'em. Ain't that music got 'em? Dancing is delight while you're holding me so tight. Stomp that London rhythm, romp that London rhythm, quake, mooch around. We'll begin at 7, gliding straight for heaven. London rhythm is in town tonight.
The rhythm and speed of this increasingly mechanized city was to inspire the painter Christopher Nevinson. He sees London as a crowded, interconnected structure, the brain of the planet.
London rhythm is in town tonight.
Throughout the 20th century, London was a city caught between the past and the future. Many artists found inspiration in the buildings and traditions that survived around them. Others were inspired by the emerging modern city and imagined what it might be like in the future. Film director Gaston Quiripé created special effects to transport the viewer through time in this incredible 1924 film. It is the story of a machine that could see into the future. Its inventor turns its gaze on London to reveal a high-tech but troubled city. High water levels flood Trafalgar Square. Monorails across Tower Bridge. And hauntingly, the Houses of Parliament adorned with a German eagle, presumably following an invasion of Britain. In 1940, London burned once more.
You can have little understanding of the life in London these days. There are no words to describe the thing that is happening. The courage of the people, the flash and roar of the guns rolling down the streets, the stench of the air raid shelters. In 3 or 4 hours, people must get up and go to work, just as though they had a full night's rest, free from the rumble of guns, and the wonder that comes when they wake and listen in the dead hours of the night.
Artist Henry Moore descended below the inferno into a new level of hell. A subterranean world of Londoners more fearful than ever before. Moore captured the raw human emotion of the Blitz.
The only thing at all like those shelters that I could think of was the hold of a slave ship on its way from Africa to America, full of hundreds and hundreds of people who were having things done to them that they were quite powerless to resist. They were a bit like the chorus in a Greek drama telling us about the violence we don't actually witness.
At dawn, Londoners come oozing out of the ground, tired and red-eyed and sleepy. The fires are dying down. I saw them turn into their own street to see if their house was still standing.
I wandered in the desolate ruins of my old squares, gashed, dismantled, the old red bricks all white powder, something like a builder's yard. Grey dirt and broken windows, sightseers, all that completeness ravished and demolished.
As before, this was an opportunity to sweep away the old and build London anew. Throughout the history of London, the building of tall towers had been proposed. As early as 1852, a plan to reconstruct the Crystal Palace as a 1,000-foot tower might have given us the world's first skyscraper. These are 1866 designs for towers on the embankment. This, the design for a monumental tower in Westminster in 1904. In 1918, a new tower was proposed for Selfridge's department store in Oxford Street. And in 1951, this Orwellian plan proposed to transform London's South Bank. But in 1956, St. Paul's Cathedral was still the tallest building in London. That year, the government suspended the 1888 London Building Act, restricting the height of buildings to 100 feet, the height of a fireman's ladder. The decision would transform the city skyline. But the new order of modernism was not to every taste. For the poet John Betjeman, it wasn't the future of London that inspired. It was the past.
Snow falls in the buffet of Aldersgate Station. Soot hangs in the tunnel in clouds of steam. City of London, before the next desecration, let your steepled forest of churches be my theme. Sunday silence, with every street a dead street, alley and courtyard empty and cobbled mews, till tingle-tang, the bell of St. Mildred's Bread Street, summoned the sermon taster to high box pews, and neighbouring towers and spirelets joined the ringing with answering echoes from heavy commercial walls, till all were drowned as the sailing clouds went singing on the roaring flood of a 12-voiced peal from Paul's. Snow falls in the buffet of Aldersgate Station. Toiling and doomed from Moorgate Street puffs the train. For us of the steam and the gaslight, the lost generation, The new white cliffs of the city are built in vain.
Over the next few decades, much of 18th and 19th century London came under attack. Tower blocks, housing estates, ring roads and highways transformed London into a sometimes brutal modern city. But it was no less inspirational to artists. Writer J.G. Ballard was in thrall to a concrete world of the future. In it were stories, possibilities, new ways of looking at the world.
I was moving through the terrain of inner urban sprawl, a geography of sensory deprivation, a zone of dual carriageways and petrol stations, business parks, and signposts to Heathrow. CCTV cameras crouched over warehouse gates. The traffic signals presided like small-minded deities over their deserted crossroads. The entire defensive landscape was waiting for a crime to be committed.
If I had my life to live over, I would still do the same things again. I would still like to roam to the place I call home, where memories will ever remain. I'll meet you when school days are over, and we'll stroll down the lane we once knew. If I had my life to live over again, I would still fall in love with you.
I'm a Londoner and I was born in Blackfriars in 1928. My husband helped to build Thames Mead. He was an erector. I used to come down here and see him, like, on a Friday. And then my daughter moved down here. And then I used to come down every weekend to see her, and it was lovely. Really lovely. I didn't think it was ugly. The kids were in the paddling pool playing. I still like it. I still like it. But it's just deteriorating. I'd love to live at the top of one of those. That's where I'd like to live.
Over the last half-century, London has become a city of towers. Towers to live in and towers to work in. And once more, a new symbol of London would rise out of a moment of destruction in the heart of the old city.
A 15-year-old girl was one of 2 people killed last night by a terrorist car bomb in central London. 91 were injured.
One bomb went off in a vehicle parked outside a row of banks in the St Mary Axe area of the city. 3 people are reported to have been killed.
The biggest bombs ever planted on the British mainland caused millions of pounds worth of damage. Some buildings may have to be demolished. Windows were shattered hundreds of yards away.
The old Baltic Exchange was beyond repair, and something would have to be built in its place. Architect Norman Foster's building at 30 St Mary's Axe, now affectionately known as the Gherkin, was completed in 2003. It has become a beacon for the age. the latest image of a city ever changing.
I live 21 Petticoat Tower, Petticoat Square Estate. I've lived in the area of Petticoat Lane all my life and I've loved living in the area, seen so many things coming and going, and I've grown up alongside of what's going on. I've seen many changes from living up so high. The city has to live and breathe, and by that I mean the city is the lifeblood, and what goes on here in the city, in these office blocks, some people might refer to them as monstrosities, but they're not. Somebody like myself that takes every opportunity of looking out, I can only see beauty there. That to me is what being a Londoner is all about.
Knowing that you're coming into work and be confronted with this view is always a pleasure.
I lost my wife 2 years ago. I used to love taking my wife to the places that I'd been to that she'd heard me talk about, to the Gherkin, to the Wibbly Wobbly Bridge, because that was her nature. She wanted to see what was going on. Every street, virtually every square of pavement has got an imprint of my wife on it, and so it makes driving in London virtually a spiritual experience every day I go out.
How I find London, it is a beautiful mess. You've got these really modern buildings next to very, very old ones that survived the Second World War. And that is London. You know, all those bits and pieces thrown all over the shop. I think it says about who we are as people. You can turn a corner and you feel lost. But it doesn't mean you can't find your way out of it.
You can see many of the paintings from tonight's programme on the BBC Your Paintings website, along with lots more images of London. Tomorrow night at 9, Coast on BBC Two reveals the hidden history of harbours.